You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. Outside the Box is brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. You got Eric saying, looks like he woke up just in time. I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I haven't slept in till 9 a.m. since Thailand, and that was more like 11:30. but yeah, I'm very jealous of that very much. Welcome to everybody in the text line, and welcome to everybody listening at home. Happy future Easter to everybody coming up here in a couple of days. I never know. Good Friday kind of feels like Memorial Day. Like Happy Good Friday definitely doesn't feel like the right way to say it. A solemn Good Friday, maybe. For Greek Orthodox people like myself, we actually it's on a rotating basis. We're a week behind you guys this year, so my Palm Sunday is going to be your Easter Sunday this time around. But to all those that celebrate, hopefully you're going to be with some family members at some point here over the weekend. Make sure you enjoy that time. Don't take it for granted, that's for sure. Atypical work schedule. I deal with that. I can dig it. You know, this is one of those Fridays where every story that we're going to get into today could probably be the lead story for the show. I put a lot of time and effort into like trying to put together stories that have some kind of through point, some type of commonality, some kind of usual or unusual connection that can be made across all of them. And today's not going to be any different. But I found myself watching the Wisconsin Supreme Court debates. I found myself reading up on Pam Bondi being retired, learning about Todd Blanche and who he is as he's the operating interim attorney general, learning about the firing of so many four-star generals for wokeness or whatever dumb reason the Fox News DEI defense secretary decided that they no longer deserve a job. People in Israel are declaring it legal to administer the death penalty to Palestinians, but not to Jewish people, which even in the craziest minds of apartheid South Africa, it never crossed their mind to make the death penalty legal for black people, but not for white people. We should probably have a conversation about whether or not we want to associate with a country that's making these kind of rules. And of course, I promised you guys in the promo that we'd be talking about energy prices, and I just don't know if we're going to have enough time to get into it today, but we're sure as hell going to try. But I think at the very least, we should start off in the Wisconsin area with this Supreme Court debate that we talked about a little bit with Jason during the local half hour. But we just have begun scratching the surface with my thoughts on the matter here. So if you guys are either not listening in Wisconsin or didn't get a chance to view it yesterday, it ended up airing at 8, which ironically enough is when I told you that it would air, but I was mistaken. I keep forgetting that I do this show from the future. So sometimes I tell you guys something about what's going to happen in the future, and then I forget that you guys don't know that yet. So I told you guys that it was going to be at 8. It was supposed to be at 7, but then due to weather, it ended up getting delayed by an hour. I thought I was going crazy. There was some 911 show on, and as someone who does not watch network television, let's just say it was a bit jarring. I was there reading some articles, like getting ready for today, waiting for the debate to start, and then all of a sudden, like 10 minutes into the hour, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't what I was supposed to be watching. Why is this on right now? Sure enough, pushed back to 8 as a result of weather. We saw a debate yesterday where, as I told Jason, I think you have your choice of Chris Taylor, who in my opinion sounded stilted, sounded scripted, sounded like she had planned canned responses, and then Maria Lazar, the conservative candidate, who sounded defensive, sounded a little bit defeated, if you ask me, at times. Both trading barbs back and forth. It got a little, I don't want to say heated. It was nothing compared to the Dan Kelly, Janet Protasewicz debate of 2023. That one grew to be flat out contentious by the end of it here. But again, when you have a 2020 truther on your hands, a Donald Trump didn't win the election kind of candidate, you can expect it to get a little more heated than you would in a normal situation, right? So we were going back and forth there, and I have to say, I pulled some audio here. We've been playing it during our newscasts here, but there's certain conversations that I don't want to imply I don't think matter. I'm not insensitive to anything like that. But at the same time, we eventually have to put abortion behind us. And yes, I recognize that that's going to require the Republican right to stop demanding that they have control over what other people do in their life. Like the libertarian half of me, I don't care if you think it's murder. My suggestion to you would be then don't do it and stop telling other people what to do would probably be the easiest way to move past this. If you're not listening in Wisconsin, we have a 20-week ban right now. We had the 1849 ban, which sounds exactly as bad as you think it does. We eventually got to the point where at no point after 20 weeks can you do it. Both of them have their thoughts about abortion. I'm going to play you both of the clips that they have there, and then we'll jump into it here. So this one is Maria Lazar, conservative candidate, and her thoughts on Chris Taylor's belief on abortion.
My opponent, when she was in the legislature, said that she thought that it shouldn't be 20 weeks or any type of restriction whatsoever, but that abortion should be allowed at any time during the pregnancy up to the end. And she still stands with that. And I think that is out of the mainstream for the people in this state.
Now, I don't know how many more times I can say this without just going absolutely nuts, but it looks like the answer is going to be at least one more time. When people are looking for access to abortion up until the birth of the child, it's not like they carry this child in them for 8.5 months and then decide, you know what? I was on the fence about this, but now that I've given it enough thought, I think I'm not going to pull the trigger and we're gonna abort. That's not a thing that happens. The reason people need access to abortion in the 8th and 9th month of pregnancy is because there's some kind of complication that is en route to them. The idea that it is extremist or taboo to think that people in an industrialized nation should have access to the healthcare practices that they need in order to make sure that nothing goes awry should not be viewed as an extremist belief on abortion. I don't know how many more times I can say it, but at least one more is apparently the answer. Now here is what Chris Taylor, her thoughts were on Maria Lazar's access to abortion.
The legislation that I worked on in the legislature codified Roe versus Wade, which my opponent does not understand. Nobody supports what my opponent is saying. There is no one more extreme ever to be a candidate on issues of reproductive health care than my opponent.
Of course, Maria Lazar would tell you that that's not the case. And her thoughts are that the 20-week abortion style approach that she has is ultimately the best path forward. She thinks that's where Wisconsinites are. And both of them always stressed that they were going to apply the law to either of these standards. Here's the problem. And here's kind of the problem with Supreme Court debates in general in this state. There's no reason to believe what anybody says ever. I have stated with a full throat, and Jason gets a little uncomfortable when I do it, but I mean it when I say it. Chris Taylor is the Democratic candidate for the Supreme Court. Maria Lazar is the Republican candidate for the Supreme Court. There are a lot of people out there who, on the liberal side of the equation, remember what conservative justices in the U.S. Supreme Court had to say about Roe v. Wade and had to say about guaranteeing abortion access, only for them to get a majority and immediately appeal Roe v. Wade. So I'm not saying it's fair that this happens to Maria Lazar, but she is running against the history of conservative court and abortion, which is going to be a hard mountain to climb, in my humble opinion here. And on top of that, there's the election question as well, but I have one more thought about abortion here. But I say all this to say, I feel like 5 to 7 minutes were dedicated to talking about abortion during this debate. No one's mind was changed. It's not like Chris Taylor spoke about abortion and somebody who viewed themselves as a pro-life Christian is all of a sudden like, you know what? I like the way she's saying this. Conversely, I don't think there's anybody who believes that women deserve the right to make their own decisions that listened to Maria Lazar and is like, you know what? I trust her to not mess with this were she to find herself in some kind of majority situation. I don't believe that anybody is actually changing their minds based on what they are hearing during this during that debate, personally. And it goes beyond that. And again, I'm not saying this is fair. I'm saying this is where people's minds are. Independents and Democratic voters are looking at a Trump administration that is trying to pass a SAVE Act, trying to pass a Save America Act, that no matter how many times people try to bill this as a voter ID law, they do not see it through that lens. They see it through a very different lens. And if you're a regular listener of this show, you know that I see it through that lens as well. Maria Lazar is going to have to run against 2020. And I'm here to tell you right now, if you're listening to me and you're a conservative consultant for anybody running for office, the answer 2020 was 6 years ago. Why are we still talking about it? Is not a valid answer for that question. The reason we're still talking about it is because the sitting president of the United States is still telling people that it was rigged. And there's a lot of morons in this country that are still believing him when he tells them that it is rigged. So when somebody who is going to have oversight of our election process can't just simply answer the question and instead has to look at it from a perspective of look, it was a long time ago. Joe Biden was the president. Whatever happens, happens. That doesn't put a lot of people's minds at ease when they're nervous about the masked Virgin Army finding themselves at polling places this November and beyond. So those kind of answers don't do it justice. And here's Chris Taylor actually highlighting the election fraud conversation from a Democratic perspective.
She ruled to release personal, private voting information to a right-wing group that tried to overturn our election. Thank goodness she was reversed by the state Supreme Court. She has been reversed repeatedly because she refuses to follow the law.
I thought that was probably the most damning line in the entire thing. Because when you hear about the reversals, there's too much unease, and it's not some kind of liberal think tank that's doing it. 75% of independents are nervous about it as well. The way Trump is carrying himself is going to have a negative impact on these kind of races here. Meanwhile, Maria Lazar rightfully highlights Chris Taylor used to be in the legislative process. She used to be very, very comfortable dealing with Democrats in a political form. And as Jason and I kind of talked about in the local half hour, you could tell she had a bit of a political bent to her even while she was doing it. And Maria Lazar was not embarrassed to go after that point.
In this race, you have to understand that we need a judge who loves the law, not a judge who loves their causes or their beliefs or their agendas. I am going to be a justice on this court who's looking to put only the law and interpret the law as it's written. I do not intend to follow any mandate or agenda or to legislate from the bench.
It's a very, I think, popular opinion, but to be perfectly frank, again, I don't think anybody buys that she's not going to do the same thing. I had to laugh. They would ask a question. They'd be like, hypothetically, this happens. How would you rule? And Chris Taylor would say, well, I'm a judge. I'm not here to operate in hypotheticals. But I also want to state that I believe every woman deserves the right to health care access, and basically told you how she would rule without saying it. And then they'd be like, Miss Lazar, same question. She'd be like, well, yeah. Same thing about the hypotheticals. But also, I believe that there's no place for a political agenda. And they would kind of tell you exactly what their thoughts were while saying that they weren't able to answer the question. And I find it hilarious that we even have to play these games anymore. I don't know what's going to happen. As Jason said, we have the highest number of undecided voters that are out there. And to be honest, I have a feeling it's going to be a party line vote. I think there's a lot of angry libs out there that are probably going to tip the scales in favor of Chris Taylor this one. I'm seeing a lot of predictions that Taylor wins by a 10 to 15 point margin. I don't think it's going to be that extreme. I think 3 to 7% is probably more likely, but I think it's more so a rebuke of Donald Trump and Republican policies, more so than it would be anything about the qualifications of either of these candidates. Perfectly honest with you guys, I'm not particularly impressed with either one of these guys, ladies rather. I I thought, like I said, I thought one of them felt scripted. I thought the other one felt defensive. I don't particularly trust either one of them to do law in any kind of impartial way. And as I've been stating since the 2023 judicial race, I don't know that there's ever been judges that actually behave in an impartial way. I think the idea of separating yourself from your core beliefs and your experiences and how you feel about life is probably um, not as doable as a lot of us want to pretend that it is. And more importantly, I feel like it's just something that we're taught when we're in high school about how the process works, and we just don't think about critically um, in terms once we hit adulthood. And I'm here to tell you, I don't know that I buy it. I'll be at the polling place on Tuesday. I'm sure a lot of you guys will be out there. And as Eric says in the YouTube chat line here, even the Heritage Foundation found effectively no evidence of election votes cast by non-citizens and election interference. Exactly. Exactly. I've been saying this for months now at this point. There's absolutely no evidence that this is a thing that's happening, and yet there's laws that are tied to it that are going to make it more difficult for American citizens to vote, which absolutely blows my mind. But we'll see what ends up happening. This will probably be the last time we talk about the Supreme Court race. And by the way, there's dozens of other local elections as well, and referendums, as we were talking about in the local half hour. We've got property tax referendums, which Jason believes is probably going to drive voter turnout more so than this race will. People nervous about either school funding or property tax increases are probably going to be voting more prevalently than people who have strong opinions about this Supreme Court, given that it's not going to flip the control of the court, but it will guarantee Democrat control of the court until 2030, were this to turn in Chris Taylor's favor. So we'll ultimately end up seeing what happens. Um, uh, I see Juba saying in the chat here. I remember the old days when the financial press didn't. I love the headline. I remember the old days when the financial press didn't lie to us. Yeah, exactly. We'll get into that later. But yeah, I we'll see what happens here. Please do get out there and vote by Tuesday if you haven't taken the time to do so already, and we'll keep it moving there. We're going to switch gears into the national scene on the other side of the break. We're going to talk about firings. Really quick side note before we do it. So I now live stream my show on TikTok Live as well, and we had a couple people following. I said the A word, rhymes with shmortion, and I got banned, or I got restricted for 10 minutes because it picked me up on the word. Guys, we are so policed. It's unbelievable. I'm very new to TikTok, so this kind of stuff I don't know. I didn't know that was a thing, but I literally got restricted. It said that I was promoting self-harm and talking about agitating topics, and I defy you guys. 920-281-1150. Does anybody feel offended by that segment? Actually, don't answer that. Based on my emails, it turns out I offend like 13 people a day, but whatever. All right, we're gonna get into those firings on the other side of the break. You guys know the main one, but there's a lot of them happening. You're going to see a lot of theories about why over the weekend. And you know I'm big on promoting restraint and not necessarily buying what people specifically on social media are telling you. And there's a lot of people out there looking to drive clicks and traffic by being bombastic. And I'm here to tell you, they don't know just as much as you don't know where it's ultimately going to lead. We're going to talk about those firings on the other side of the break. Everybody stay right where you are. We're going to be back in about 3.5 minutes. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY.
How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even?
The Dow right now is over 50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. That's what we should be talking about. The Dow right now. S&P at almost 7,000. The American people need to know this. Need to know how is the Dow.
Let me address the survivors because that's
how is the Dow.
All right, and we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking around during that break there. We've got a lot more to jump into here outside of that. Sorry, I was dancing while the music was playing and I looked ridiculous, but it's all right. I'm enjoying myself and I hope everybody else is as well. Pam Bondi's out. Happened right after the show wrapped up yesterday. I cannot prove that this administration waits until Outside the Box gets off the air before it decides before it decides to break major news for the day. But it is uncanny how many times that ends up happening, where shortly after I get off the air, that is when these kind of things end up happening. Seen a lot of theories, and I see people in the text line implying that Pam Bondi was fired for not prosecuting Donald Trump's enemies, which absolutely could be the case. In my opinion, and this is maybe a little bit of tinfoil hat theory, but you guys tell me what you think about this. I haven't seen anybody else floating this out there. The 2 nights ago, when Donald Trump spoke to the nation at 8 p.m. Wednesday night, you watched the stock futures kind of plummet immediately. Everybody who actually has a pulse and isn't beholden to one party or the other was like, yeah, a lot of the nonsense that he said was BS. We're not buying that. We're moving on. I can't believe he said those kind of things. No one was really buying it. Everybody was critical of what he had to say there. He really didn't put people's minds at ease about the war. Everybody was talking about that Wednesday night. And then he fired Pam Bondi. And then there was only one story the rest of the day. And I think it washed the Wednesday night debacle out of the news cycle, and it went to the Pam Bondi firing, because again, that's where the eyes are, right? Like I haven't played the Dow right now song in a while, and unfortunately it's going to be the last day that I'm going to have a reason to be able to do it. But Pam Bondi, since that hearing, has been on the minds of a lot of people out there, especially people that takes the Epstein case seriously, and that is both Democratic, Republican, and independent. Anybody who takes it seriously knows that Pam Bondi isn't the person who's interested in prosecuting people who are guilty. And by the way, here's Todd Blanche on Laura Ingraham. You're not going to get the kind of reaction you expect out of him either. I don't want to say this. I don't want to be a defeatist, but I don't have belief that the Democrats are actually going to do anything about this either once they have power. Here's Todd Blanche being asked about whether or not he is going to push forward with examining what exactly was going on in those emails.
We will always investigate any evidence of misconduct, but as you know, it is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. And so as horrible as it's not a crime to email with Mr. Epstein. And some of these men may have done horrible things. And if we have evidence that allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But it's also the kind of thing that the American people need to understand, that it isn't a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. It isn't a crime to have
Didn't look like that's all that was going on some of those photos. I mean, if the photos could speak, some of them look pretty bad.
That's right. And unfortunately, photos can't speak.
So, yeah, he's not going to do anything either. Now, to be fair, Todd Blanche is the interim attorney general. There's going to be other people that end up being floated, and then inevitably one of them will end up getting it. I promise you, if you identify as a Democrat, you're going to think the person sucks. I promise you, if you identify as Republican or MAGA, you're going to think they're great and doing the best job that they can. We're going to be right back where we started. And I think that's an important thing to remember here when we have these kind of talks. I made some social media posts about it, but just for those of you in the cheap seats, when you attach this kind of fervor and animosity to a name, to one person, as opposed to an idea, it makes it more difficult for people to take you seriously. Like, for instance, for the last 12 years, we basically heard that Donald Trump is Hitler. So in 2028, when J.D. Vance or Lil Marco are running for office, what are you supposed to do to make the people who are on the fence or who don't follow politics every day? Are you going to try and present them as somehow more uniquely terrifying than the way that you presented Donald Trump for the last 12 years? It's kind of like what MSNBC did for Nikki Haley during the primaries in 2024. Nikki Haley was signing bombs. She's very pro-military industrial complex. She also would be bombing Iran just like Donald Trump is. She too would be cutting taxes for billionaires just like Donald Trump is. Meanwhile, liberals on MSNBC would be like, we really need a return to the normalcy of the Republican Party and get away from the Trump flank. Like, realistically, other than mean tweets, we'd be in the exact same world that we are in today. J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, they offer no distinctly different message or platform than what Donald Trump is doing either. And I think it's important that a lot of people cling to these kind of things. And by the way, Republicans, don't think just because I'm not listing liberal candidates doesn't mean that you guys don't do the exact same thing. Kamala Harris was running on Reagan-era tax rates after Joe Biden set the record for oil and gas drilling in 2023 and in 2024, while increasing funding for both ICE and the police all 4 years that they were in office. And you ran around calling them a bunch of socialists that want to defund the police and destroy America. So if no matter what the candidate actually stands for results in you describing them that way, then inevitably people are going to stop listening to you describing them that way. Because I hate to break it to you, Kamala Harris sucked, but not because she was a communist or a socialist, but because she was a Reagan-era, Bush-era Republican cosplaying as a liberal, and yet you guys still labeled her as a socialist. So it's not like this is uniquely Democratic. It's just right now conservatives hold the trifecta, so that's the way that I am aiming it here. Pam Bondi was not qualified for the position, and there's her record as AG is absolutely not going to be remembered in any kind of positive light. I'm just going to be frank with you. She realistically barely did anything, and if you ask me what would the lasting impression be of her term as the AG, it would be as per More Perfect Union, dropping 23,000 criminal investigations, mostly into white collar and corporate crime, halting 159 corporate enforcement actions. She settled the lawsuit between Live Nation and Ticketmaster that wherever you fall on the political spectrum, you do not have a positive opinion on the Live Nation Ticketmaster merger. And she helped 18 different companies avoid a cumulative $3.1 billion in penalties. She was not doing a good job. I'm sure she was doing something about Mexicans that made a really big deal, but also I don't care, and this is actually what matters. And she wasn't doing any of those kind of things. And by the way, if you don't follow me on socials, you should be. But I posted a chart, which is available anywhere you follow me, that highlights that while 2025 Trump was uniquely bad, as per usual, there's a status quo, and then there's dragging us away from the status quo, blah, 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 blah. 2025 Trump was uniquely bad in terms of white-collar crime prosecutions, more than half of what happened in 2024 under Joe Biden. We have been on a negative trend with corporate prosecutions since 2012. Nobody really has an interest in doing anything about it, but it is just a uniquely low number under the Trump administration. I bet you Hunter Biden was involved somehow, but nevertheless, food for thought there. We'll see who ends up replacing her. There's quite a few people that are on the list right now. I know I saw Janine Pirro, or Perino, however the hell you say her name. And there were a handful of others that I didn't write down because I'm a fool and I probably should have. But there's a handful of others, none of which will inspire hope in anyone who doesn't like Republicans, and all of which I'm sure sound like banger options to the diehards. So we'll see where it goes from there. I have more thoughts, but we have comments. We'll do the comments first. Justin says, I'm glad Bondi and her smug attitude is gone. She also is bad for 2A. Okay, there you go. And I've seen conservatives frustrated with that. That said, I don't expect justice from her replacement in regards to Epstein. Yeah, we're never getting justice for Epstein. Like, I hope you understand that. I've stated the Epstein release. It's kind of like, I've been comparing it to October 7th, but I think it's actually a more appropriate comparison to compare it to the departure from Afghanistan. No matter who got us out of Afghanistan, it was going to look like the cluster that it looked like under Joe Biden. That's, in my opinion, part of the reason why you didn't see Obama or Trump make the move to get us out of Afghanistan. But it doesn't mean that it didn't need to be done. And of course, had Donald Trump gotten us out of Afghanistan, it would have been the Democrats saying, can you believe what kind of turmoil is going on? What's going to happen to those women in Afghanistan now that Donald Trump pulled us out? And it would be the Republicans saying, you know, we're anti-war and we can't keep fighting these forever wars. What are we going to do? Stay there forever? It's these fixed points. But because we are so tribalistic, and we are so stuck in our own parties, we pretend that one side is handling it. I'm not saying you're doing that, Justin, but I'm saying that the royal you, we're so stuck in these patterns that we believe that if only our people were in charge, then it would have been done right, and I would have been in favor of it. Kamala Harris and whoever her AG would have been, we're not going to deliver in any kind of way with Epstein. You know what would have happened? There would have been a hearing for Donald Trump, much like there was for Bill and Hillary Clinton, and then nothing would come from it. And there would be hours worth of dialogue, one way or the other, and I'd be sitting there sort of covering it, but also telling you, you know, these people are all rich and famous and powerful, and they're never held to account. Why are we pretending like they're held to account? And sure enough, that's where we ultimately ended up here. I hope I have enough clout with you guys for you to know that I react to these kind of things the exact same way, regardless of who's in power at this point. And that's kind of the way that I look at it. But yeah, Justin, you're exactly right. Whoever replaces Bondi, not happening. DSL says, whatever happened to all those victims that came out and said, do something or we're going to name names? What are they waiting for? I agree. I mean, far be it for me. I know there's going to be people. I have never been sexually assaulted, and I know there's an element of mental anguish that goes with it. And I'm not trying to appear unsympathetic or unaware of what they're going through and what might require it to take a little bit more time to come forward. But also, if you go out publicly and make that threat, I think you should follow through with it. Not for the drama of it, not to get butts and seats, not to placate people, but to actually put some real evidence to this kind of thing. And I'm hopeful that still happens here. It is crazy. Like, I'm going to play the audio again. Hold on. Listen to what Todd Blanche had to say, and then I'll explain why this is so extra frustrating when you hear it.
We will always investigate any evidence of misconduct, but as you know, it is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. And so as horrible as it's not a crime to email with Mr. Epstein. And some of these men may have done horrible things. And if we have evidence that allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But it's also the kind of thing that the American people need to understand, that it isn't a crime to party with Mr. Epstein. It isn't a crime to have
Didn't look like that's all that was going on some of those photos. I mean, if the photos could speak, some of them look pretty bad.
That's right. And unfortunately, photos can't speak.
So we're supposed to believe that we've released 3 million individual files, unredacted, that all of these banks that were involved with Epstein funds have paid hundreds of millions in dollars in restitution, have faced no criminal prosecution, but have paid hundreds of millions of dollars in restitution. We see some of the most rich and powerful people appearing thousands of times throughout these emails. Some of them in the low thousands, 1 in 2,000, like Reid Hoffman and Bill Gates, and, you know, fill in the blank here. And then, of course, the sitting president of the United States appearing more than 38,000 times. And you're telling me that all of these people were involved with this guy. They all made money with this guy. They all partied with this guy, and none of them knew or did anything that would be deemed illegal, or at the very least worth investigating in some kind of meaningful way. Nobody's hands are dirty, is what they're trying to convince us right now. That's essentially what he said right there. Yeah, if there were evidence that anybody did anything wrong, yeah, you bet your ass that we'd get over there and we'd do something about it. Meanwhile, like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me with this? It's a wild story. It's wild that we all just kind of keep going about our business like while this is happening in front of us, and we allow the tribalistic nature to divide us on this front. Because and I do believe liberals when they say if Bill Clinton did something, arrest him. Like, I don't believe that's a front. But I also know that were they to control the levers of power, we wouldn't be seeing any type of concerted effort to arrest liberals. And there would be a concerted effort to just drag Trump for the next 3 years. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. But go for all of them. Drop the partisan hackery and actually do something. This administration has completely bastardized it, and I have no faith in the Democratic establishment to do anything meaningful about it either. But God, guys, like, we're talking about some really heinous things going on behind the scenes to hundreds, if not thousands, of young women at the time, of varying ages today. Um, that a lot of people claim to care about. Like, every election cycle is about, this guy, he lets all the pedophiles out when they are judged, so that's why you shouldn't vote for them. Meanwhile, we have these lists and nobody seems to care. I'll never understand it. I will never understand it. And for the record, and now I'm speaking directly to MAGA, I don't give a single crap about your blah, blah, blah grooming kids. We got to stop the transes and the drag queens. None of that is going to register with me ever again. I will actually openly mock you if you try and paint it in that light, because we know you don't care enough to actually derive some kind of pushback against, these guys that are doing things. But God forbid a trans does it, then we got real issues. That's when the real issues start to percolate through, and we got to take it seriously. Kristen says it's hard to celebrate anyone's firing because it's likely their replacements will be so much worse. Women that carry water for men like this in power are always the first ones discarded. I mean, realistically, this administration compared to Trump 1.0 has been far less volatile in terms of the rotating door, the firings / quittings taking place on a regular basis. Although I will say the 2 firings in the last month have been women. But I also do find it funny, and I'm not accusing you of this, Kristen, but I saw quite a bit of it online. It's like, hey, did anyone notice that all the right wingers getting fired don't have male genitalia? Like, okay, do you disagree or agree with the philosophy? Like, who cares if it's a man or a woman? I understand Donald Trump clearly has an issue with women in authority positions. All right. Like, obviously. But at the end of the day, it's about the freaking policy. It's not about the identity. Pam Bondi would have sucked just as much if she had a Y chromosome. I think that's an important thing to remember here when we talk about this kind of stuff. All right. I have a couple more thoughts about this, but we do have to squeeze one more break in before we get to the top of the hour. We'll have about 5 or 6 minutes on the other side. I'm going to peruse the YouTube chat. I see we've got some more texts coming through here as well. And also, we'll take calls on the matter. 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. We'll keep this ball rolling on the other side. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY.
Estate planning seminar. They're held monthly and designed to give you clarity, not pressure. Sign up at hooperlawoffice.com. Hooper Law Office. Locations in Appleton, Oshkosh, and Green Bay, or virtually. Everyone has a legacy, Let's protect it together.
Look at that 7-day forecast, guys. Don't take my word for it. Winter is not over yet, and that means that your sump pump is about to get a workout. You know, water damage is the leading cause in home insurance claims, not just in Wisconsin, but all over this nation. And it's important to make sure that your sump pump is in working order before you find out the hard way. That's why I suggest you reach out to Roush Plumbing. Just use that free text line that I'm telling you about. Tim and his team have the skills and expertise to make sure that you are prepared for this period of the year to avoid those headaches down the road. Head to that website, roushplumbing.com, for the text line and plenty more information about all of the services that they offer. That's Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. So many wires and, and different cameras and lights everywhere now. This whole enterprise has become a lot to handle these days. I love it. I'm not complaining. Although Sterline tells me in the YouTube chat that apparently TikTok Live is dead now because there's so much bad content. Well, there's one batch of good content out here at the very least. A lot of people speculating surrounding the Pam Bondi fire. She was set to be deposed, I believe, 12 days from yesterday. Which may have been part of the reason why they were nervous about it as well. She may very well end up finding herself in some kind of legal situation here in the near future. as a lot of people who associate themselves with this president do. We're going to have to wait and see. But there's reporting by the Daily Mail, who's the same operation that outed Kristi Noem's husband earlier in the week, that say that Pam Bondi was straight up begging to not be let go. She did not want to lose that position yet, which is kind of remarkable to me because she had become quite the punching bag for Donald Trump and the Epstein conversation. I mean, hell, we have a whole auto-tuned song about her deposition that a lot of people seem to be having fun with since it was invented. But apparently she loved the gig, so we're going to have to wait and see where it ultimately ends up going with her. But I don't know. You're good, like I said, and we're going to get in the 10 o'clock hour. We're going to jump into the Army generals and what's going on with those guys. Some theories that are being bandied about, but nothing is actually confirmed. And we're kind of dealing with the same thing here with Pam Bondi right now. And then I couldn't imagine wanting that position because you're going to have to continue answering questions about this. It's not going to stop just because Pam Bondi's gone. Like I said, it's not like maybe she is uniquely bad because pivoting to the Dow the way that she did and people's 401ks was a uniquely embarrassing way to talk about Epstein. But whoever they put in there to replace her is absolutely not going to be somebody that's going to do the job to the satisfaction of Americans that actually want to see some kind of fallout from these Epstein files. I couldn't imagine. Maybe I'm not power hungry, so maybe it's just hard for me to fathom wanting to do it. But like, who in their right mind? Who thinks their career, 6 months after serving as this attorney general, be better off? Look at Dan Bongino. He was one of the highest rated podcasts out there. Then he became the FBI deputy director. And I swear to God, the only people that are still defending that man are trolls and bots. Like, I don't believe real people are actually saying that are saying nice things about Dan Bongino are real people. And it's all because they got brought into this. Like, who in their right mind, unless your intention is to get in there, let a bunch of corporations off with whatever kind of shady business they were engaging in, make a quick couple million and get out, and then not really worry about what the next pathway is for you, or get a job on a board or somewhere involved with these Epstein class officials that you covered for. Like, unless that is your agenda, I could not imagine actually wanting to do this. They're floating Janine Perino's name, or Piero's name, as replacing Pam Bondi. If she does that, she will not be able to work at Fox News on the other side of it. Not because she offended anybody that works there, but because nobody who watches Fox News is going to want to hear from her. Look at what Dan Bongino is going through right now. That's just me, of course. What else do we have here? Ken says Pam Bondi, even if she gets into legal trouble, she'll be pardoned. Doesn't even matter. Probably. We're used to that, though, at this point. Again, the powerful people. Laws are just for you and I, Ken. They're not for people like the Bidens and the Trumps and the Bondis and the whatnot. And what's this? Cynthia says Hedgeseth fired the army chaplain because he wasn't going to promote Armageddon to these troops. Like I said, I'm going to get into that in the 10 o'clock hour. There's a lot of things to be worried about there for sure. There's a lot more to jump into here. We're going to put a pin in this conversation as we are pressing up against the break there. All the ways to find me. Download the WHBY app if you're getting out of the car, and take the show with you on the road. Take it to your home. Take it wherever you need to go. I upload the show right after the program wraps up. If you can't catch it live, no commercials, no nothing. We also stream live on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and TikTok Live, although the Facebook Live thing might just be a Fridays thing going forward. We'll see. Please do take part in that. Please subscribe. Every little bit helps, and I appreciate that as we're trying to build something here. And we'll be back jumping into these firings and what I think they mean, plus all of your calls and texts. Outside the Box, WHBY. I feel like I should be a very sought after judge for the best burger competition because I'm not going to eat it with any condiments or even a bun. Like I'm just going to get the burger meat, and I feel like like I would provide the least biased opinion on the matter, you know? That's true. It all gets a 3 out of 10. Out of 10. All right, thank you. Here's Hooper. And we're back to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. Outside the Box is brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. Shout out to John J420 on TikTok. It looks like we made friends here. I'm gonna have to look up the Barnwood Builders when I get a little bit of spare time here. I wrote it down on my notes. If you're just joining us, we spent the first part of the show discussing the Wisconsin Supreme Court debate that took place yesterday. The way in which both candidates kind of painted the other one as an extremist, with varying degrees of truth to it, and then realistically coming to the conclusion that I don't think a whole lot of minds are changed by this style. Not to imply that there is a better style of debate that might have resulted in minds changing, but that when it comes to a Supreme Court race, I don't think people are expecting each other, or rather, to have minds changed when they learn about these kind of things, which I think is worth highlighting. But and then we moved on to the Pam Bondi firing, a little bit about how you can't really expect much of a change in philosophy. We've got Todd Blanche as the interim. For all we know, by the time we talk on Monday, we're going to have somebody new in the position here, and go from there. And by the way, I'm on WHBY Radio, John. So check us out. We've got an app. Download the WHBY app. I upload the show there every day if you can't ever catch it live. We're also on YouTube. Just search at Ben Cominos. I feel like half this show now is me plugging my stuff, which I'm not good at. I'm not good at plugging the stuff. I'm going to need all you guys to be my marketing people because I do forget. Like, I should probably do it more. And even the limited amount of time I do it, I'm just like, please. And I also see people debating about the best burger. If you weren't listening during the news break, we've got a best burger competition going. And if you're new to the program, I'm one of the plainest eaters you'll ever meet in your life. So when I get a burger with no bun and no condiments, and I just eat the burger meat. And I feel like that would make me uniquely positioned to be the best judge of a of a best burger in Wisconsin. But you know, I wasn't asked to be a part of it. Maybe a petition is in order. And I see a bunch of you guys messaging me. I heard the CBS Newsbacks report at the top of the hour. You guys know I don't like shooting from the hip. As it stands right now, a U.S. F-15 has been reportedly shot down in southern Iran. 2 pilots ejected. There's actually videos circulating online that appear, this is according to Republicans Against Trump, that online appear to show U.S. aircraft and helicopters flying deep and low inside Iran as search and rescue efforts for the pilots continue. You also heard from the CBS report there that there is apparently a bounty on these 2 soldiers that ejected themselves from the Iranian government. It also calls into question the comments about air superiority and just how diminished Iran's capacity to fire back on American aircrafts, how true that is. I actually have some audio of a CNN anchor essentially highlighting that despite what the president says, I know you're shocked that he might have been blowing it out of proportion, that Iran still has roughly half of their missiles and anti-aircraft capabilities still available, despite being told otherwise. And this moment here kind of highlights that. I'm not a thoughts and prayers guy. I'm going to be honest. I am a engage in actions and don't do the wrong thing kind of guy. Do keep these people in your thoughts. It's got to be a terrifying situation that they find themselves in right now. I can't even begin to fathom what that must be like for those people that were in that aircraft and what they are thinking right now. This is not the time to be scoring political points, and moreover, this is not the time to get jingoistic either. The reason we are in this position is because the sitting president in the United States forced us into a war of choice, and these things are happening. This is not a reason to want to escalate things, and I know that a certain particular party is going to use this moment as an effort to try and escalate things. So please do not fall for that and do the right thing. Stay focused. We do not need to be here. As one anti-war propagandist put it back in 2016, and I think even though this guy is a bit radical, we should probably be listening to him from time to time.
The people opposing us are the same people and think of this, who've wasted $6 trillion on wars in the Middle East. We could have rebuilt our country twice. That have produced only more terrorism, more death, more suffering. Imagine if that money had been spent right here in our home. We've totally destabilized the Middle East. And if you think about it, $6 trillion, and it was far better 15 years ago.
So yeah, as whoever that was, I didn't write a name down, but whoever that anti-war advocate from 2016 is, I think he makes a lot of good points in the original war on terror and highlights why I think Donald Trump is making a bad decision today. If anybody knows who that was, let me know. Jerry says the Supreme Court debate might not change minds, but it might drive turnout. That's fair. That could be true. There might be people who might not have even known it was happening. If you weren't listening in the 8:30 hour, Jerry, Jason Zimmerman of BAY believes that the referendums are going to drive turnout more than the Supreme Court will, which, given how 23 and 25 played out, that seems to be a pretty unique situation there for sure. And Jim says, I wonder if the perennial closer for the GOP criminal cover-ups, Bill Barr, is called in to pinch hit batting cleanup for AG again. I doubt it. I feel like there was a lot of animosity at the end of that little tenure there. So that at least sticks out to me, but I don't know. But in any event, I do want to stay in the armed forces conversation. And again, during the commercial breaks, will peruse some news stations. Please, if anybody comes across more information, if any developments happen, I can't guarantee I'm going to read them on the air, but I'll at least look them over and go to confirm them. You guys know, especially with stuff this serious, I don't shoot from the hip on this kind of stuff. I realize as a member of media, I'm supposed to be driving eyes and attention to the show all the time. I'm bad at that part of the job. All right. So when I was shortly after I got home yesterday, it was announced that General Randy George, the Army Chief of Staff, ended up getting fired by Pete Hegseth, being told to retire immediately once being called into his office. Lord knows I have no love lost for the DEI defense secretary. He's been preventing promotions for people, it seems like exclusively based on the idea that they're black and women, and how could they be qualified for the idea of being promoted, says the Fox News talk show host that was promoted to the Secretary of Defense. It does the hypocrisy knows no bounds. I guess we need more white people in the Defense Department. That's fine. That was just the tip of the iceberg, though. Over the course of the day, there were more than a dozen generals and admirals, or excuse me, not during the day, but over the course of the last 14 months, 26 generals and admirals over 14 months. No misconduct cited for any of them, just being let go, probably because they're part of the transes or whatever the hell the logic is there. We're looking at, I have the list here, the Joint Chiefs Chairman, the Army Chief of Staff, the Commander of the Army Transformation and Training, the Chief of Chaplains, and at least 22 other senior officials from the most powerful military on earth. Moreover, I don't think I need to tell you guys, we are embroiled in a war in the Middle East right now, which you would think one of the highest ranking Army officials would probably be somebody that you would want to remain consistent in their position. You really don't want to see that kind of volatility at a time like this. This has allowed people, because again, I'm big on deductive reasoning, right? I'm big on speculation. I'm big on deductive reasoning, but I'm also big on labeling things as such. I'm big on not pretending that my speculation somehow comes with a guarantee. We joke sometimes, obviously, but I never present it as a fact that the way things are headed. And there's a lot of people out there that have theories, that have speculation as to why this Army general was let go, but there really is no evidence of that yet. So for sake of argument, there are people that believe that this Army general was released in the name of making sure that we are able to put boots on the ground. That Randy George, Army Chief of Staff Randy George, does not want to put boots on the ground and was pushing back against that, and therefore he was fired in the name of finding somebody that does want to put boots on the ground. Is that possible? Maybe. Is it guaranteed? No. The Army chaplain was fired. I received a text or a chat, I don't remember where it came from, but somebody mentioned that the chaplain was let go because he was not embracing Pete Hegseth's Christian Zionist approach to armed conflict. And we kind of talked about this on Wednesday, and I got one angry call, like as I was getting off the air here. There are people in high-ranking positions, and Pete Hegseth is counted among them, who believe that in order to bring their Lord and Savior down to earth, that a war in the Middle East needs to happen, and there needs to be mass violence in that region in order for that to happen. That is not somebody that deserves the reins of the armed forces. That is a radical. That is somebody that should not be taken seriously. And there's theories that this chaplain was fired for not embracing that attitude more fervently. Again, is it possible? Absolutely. Is it the way that things went? We'll never know. What we do know is this. We are now seeing volatility in positions where I would argue experience and an understanding of the chain of command and the way things like this work and what it's been like to be in other armed conflicts are probably pretty important pieces of information to bring with you into this kind of situation. And instead, We are watching turnover regularly. This war, as has been stated 1,000 times over, is not popular. It is not of our interest to be engaging in this. We now have 2 more lives at stake here, and CENTCOM, there are reports coming from the Intercept that CENTCOM, Central Command, is providing misleading information since October of 23, actually, but obviously being focused on for the purposes of since this conflict started, but that we do not have an accurate interpretation of exactly what has been going on overseas since it has started. Whether or not that's true or not, I would find it hard to believe that the Intercept would print something like that unless they had a little bit of validity to the claims that they were making there. I read the article. Everything seems to check out, but this is the kind of food for thought that I think is important for us to be aware of. And then on top of all of this, and I'll be interested, and I apologize to the TikTok listeners if I end up getting restricted again for using the I word here, but we're going to see what happens. I got to test the waters here. Over the course of this week, there's been a story that's developing between Israel and Palestine where a law has been passed and has been celebrated by popping champagne with a bunch of people that are in Israel's government that wear little golden noose pins on their lapels, celebrating the excitement that a death penalty has been passed in Israel for Palestinians, but has not been passed for Jewish people. So in other words, when you're in Gaza as a farmer, and then a settler comes and takes your land aggressively and throws you off the land and gets in your face and gets violent. If you defend your land violently and end up, unaliving, as they say online, somebody who was trying to take your land, that Palestinian could be held accountable, and in all likelihood would be held accountable to the death penalty. But if the person trying to take the land got violent, there would not be the same punishment. Israel is part of the reason that we are in this conflict to begin with. And this is just another example of an ally of the United States engaging in an action, engaging in a belief and activity that I think we would go crazy. Picture in America if Donald Trump passed a law that black people are susceptible to the death penalty, but the death penalty no longer exists for white people. Picture what the reaction would be in America. I am not saying that we should tell Israel how to govern, but I am also saying that our money and weapons do not have to go to facilitating people with this attitude. As I highlighted on Tuesday, they have already taken a larger percentage of the land in Lebanon than Russia has taken from the people in Ukraine. And now we're in a position where even as Donald Trump claims that we would stay in a ceasefire with the people of Iran and not bomb their civilian infrastructure, by the way, we bombed a bridge yesterday, Israel has come out and said, oh, we're still going to do what we want, though. Like that, we're most certainly not beholden to that, and we are not going to play by those rules. And across all of these different stories, you see American working class lives that are lost, lives that are changed, people that are injured, people that end up dead, people that end up captured. We have no idea what's going to happen to these pilots, and I'm incredibly nervous about what their future is going to look like, and then what the response is going to be as we get ready to enter another weekend here. Lots of cause for concern, and as you watch the actual adults in the room begin losing their jobs for reasons that we really can't identify, that only adds to the unease. We watched oil prices go up 8% yesterday, and the last 25 minutes definitely feel like an escalation that is only going to further entrench us in this conflict, and in a way that is only going to make our lives more expensive. So whether you are angry about this from an anti-war perspective or a cost of living perspective or a just because of people look and talk differently than us, it doesn't mean that they are any less human than us perspective, there is a reason for you to be upset with this. And yet it seems like our elected officials are more than happy to keep marching us toward an outcome that none of us really have any interest in seeing play out. That's at least my opinion on the matter. And I didn't anticipate the segment necessarily going this way, but the news about the F-15 breaking at the same time kind of impacted how I'm trying to report on this. And like, as I'm talking to you, I'm scouring the internet trying to see if I'm missing anything else while I'm talking to you guys. I feel like this is going to be a moment-to-moment update kind of thing, so I will try and keep you posted as we roll along here. We got someone who's literally trying to call right now. You're going on hold, and somebody else has been waiting for about 2 minutes here, so we'll do them first. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben, Cynthia in Florida. There's still people that don't want to believe that Israel is part of this. I read the Israeli press. The head of the Mossad is the one that came up with this crackpot idea that they would go in when there were popular protests because of sanctions, and they armed them. They gave them Starlink, they gave them weapons, and they thought then that uprising where 3,000 some people were killed, not 30,000 or $45,000, thousand that Trump said, would rise up. And then so that didn't work. So they doubled down again. Okay, we'll kill all the leaders over there. Gave Trump the plan. Trump's the compromise fool that went along with this. But you were talking about property. And I saw something this morning, and I thought, this can't be real. There was a guy standing outside a Hispanic guy's house telling him he owned his house. It was a Jewish guy. Then I found a news report. Some of these people in New York are doing deed fraud and trying to say, I own your house.
It's a slippery slope here, Cynthia, and I appreciate the call. And like I watch this stuff transpire every single day, and like you see us being dragged into it, and some of us defending it, and it's just so cyclical in nature. And like it kind of ties in with the first hour. Like we can only talk about the Shishmorshin conversation for so long before everything we've had to say has been said, and we should probably just settle on the default maybe it's none of our business perspective. And like I guess you can kind of pick up what I'm saying about this one here as well. We got a second call coming through here. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Morning, Ben. I'm out cleaning up ice storm damage, and you were talking, and I had to run to my truck to grab my phone. So here it goes.
Yeah.
So you're talking about Israel. You have seen the proposed new property or the new lines for their new area that they want to take over.
Yeah.
Okay. So they know what they want to do, and they're not hiding the fact. As far as like de-escalating, they bombed a bridge today. They're not bringing 40,000 troops in and a third carrier. What else is coming up? Just like infantry that are ready to jump on the island because they're going to stop and negotiate out of it because there's nobody to negotiate with. I do believe you're going to lose a beer at the Riverside over this because I do believe there's going to be troops on the ground, and I'm just waiting for the day that it happens because it's going to happen. I just don't see them backing down because there's no reason to back down.
Yeah, they could drag us into it, and I think it's going to be a matter of the American population just saying, this is your fight. This is your fight, and we do not want to. I realize when you sign up for the armed forces, you, in a lot of ways, don't kind of get a vote at that point. But I'll tell you right now, the population gets a vote, and we do not want this.
Yeah, the American public, but that's 70%. That's 30%. He doesn't care what the population was. He's going to put us in a huge war that's not going to be 2 or 3 more weeks. I mean, we'll be lucky if we get out of this thing in 2 to 3 years, if not. I don't see anything good happening out of this, and I just had to comment. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it, Brian. And I'm kind of on. I kind of see the perspective at which you're looking at this as well, and it's kind of hard to avoid that here. This has been such a catastrophe from day one that it's infuriating from a lot of different perspectives, because while I didn't necessarily buy the idea that he was the anti-war president, again, he did set the record for drone strikes back during his first presidency, but this is like a full-blown catastrophe that makes me think that there has to be something else at play. And I'm not making excuses. What's funny to me is you turn on Fox News, you watch right-wing media, not the podcasters, because the people my age on the right will hedge their bets, kind of like the way I would talk about the Democratic administration, but you can tell they're ticked about this. In more traditional, more legacy right-wing media, you see them saying, Donald Trump was talking about Iran, and he pulled out a napkin and he drew an entire map of the Middle East from memory and talked about what his game plan was, acting like he was some kind of brilliant tactician that had all these ideas for what he was going to do once the conflict started. But then later on in the hour, they'll also tell you, maybe he didn't have a firm understanding of what the intelligence operators were telling him. He didn't really process the information that was handed to him, and maybe he needs better people giving him better information. So wait a minute, is he this master tactician that has a thorough understanding of geopolitics in the Middle East and the outcomes from the actions that he engaged in? Or is he a bit of a simpleton that had no idea what he was actually embroiling this nation in and didn't realize what the outcome of his decision was going to be 33 days ago? It can't be both of those things at the same time. So which one does the right-wing media want to cling to? Is he the master tactician genius, or is he a bit of a buffoon that goes along with what people are telling him? Not to pretend that Sleepy Joe was somehow a master tactician, but let's call a spade here. And we all know that in a world where Joe Biden or Kamala Harris got us into this mess, you guys would not be sitting there acting like, well, there's it's a complex situation that we really can't understand. Iran's been a threat for 47 years. It's nice that Kamala Harris is doing this. That would not be your attitude, and we all know I'm right. 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. Larry says 33,000 and 45,000 killed are the entire 45 years since the Shah. And Eric says Secretary of War Crimes, you mean? Yeah, no, I go with the DEI Defense Secretary, but it's all gravy. It's all gravy as far as I'm concerned. Anybody wants to chime in? 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. We'll keep this conversation rolling on the other side. I also have, it's funny, like, there's so many things going on in the world that so many things that matter get muted. Like, I have a story here. I have an article right here that I'm looking at that I read up. I have some of the important parts highlighted. Donald Trump signed an executive order to add 100% tariff on name brand drugs coming into America from certain other nations and what it would do to the cost of drugs, versus Donald Trump's claims that this would actually bring manufacturing and prices down in the country. I kind of want to talk about that, but it also feels muted given what took place over the course of the last 30 minutes. So I'm going to take this commercial break. I'm going to scour the internet, see if I can find any updates on what's going on with that F-15. If I can, I'm going to tell you guys what I see. If I don't, we're going to jump into the tariff conversation here, even though it kind of feels like a reduction in intensity compared to what we were just talking to. And we'll jump into that. And I see we got a couple people popping through the YouTube chat as well. We'll handle those too. All that and more coming up, guys. So stay where you are. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY. I'll tell you what, that South African that throws up Nazi salutes completely broke this website. I scrolled your generic news networks. I haven't seen anything. Normally, Twitter. When I first started this job, when news like this broke, you could go on to Twitter and there'd be 5,000. Like obviously, some of them would be horse crap, but there'd be so many examples of news that you could find that you really couldn't get anywhere else. And now, when you scroll through it, it's all just AI slop. I did come across one here that highlights 4 different conversations based on generations, showing you that a certain generation, and if Brian out in Fremont's listening, earmuffs, Brian, a certain generation is only in favor of welfare if it affects old people, but really hates welfare if it goes anywhere else. I'll allow you guys to determine which generation that is, whereas millennials and Gen Z are in favor of welfare as, for anybody that needs it. Shocking. But again, not anything to do with what we're talking about here. I don't understand why why it's funneling stuff that like that to me, although it absolutely is in the wheelhouse of this show here. I will continue perusing, but realistically we've got 20 minutes before the show's going to be over for the day and for the week, so we'll probably have a lot more to talk about on Monday given the fallout of what's taken place over the last 40 minutes or so here. But definitely a concerning moment. Definitely a cause for concern here as we kind of move forward into this conflict that I don't think any of us really want to be a part of. Old Lib on my YouTube chat says boots on the ground may get a start with search for downed pilots. Let's hope not. That's what I'm saying. I do feel like that's inevitably where this is ultimately going to head. Is there's going to be an escalation that comes with this that I don't think any of us really want to see happen, or at least most of us want to see happen. And the people that do want to see it happen wouldn't want to see it happen with a liberal in power. So I'd argue none of us want to see it happen, and some of us are in a cult. Lenny says, what did we learn from the past concerning the situation President Carter was dealing with the Shah? Nothing. And I don't want to open that can of worms, Lenny, but like realistically, Carter's handling of the situation is still viewed through such a lens that it's very frustrating to try and process it, to be perfectly frank. We've got a call coming on through the WHBY talking text lines, 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. Anybody else wants to chime in, you can feel free to do so there. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben. This whole war thing is just making me physically sick to my stomach. So I'm wondering if we could change the subject for just a little bit here for a minute.
Yeah, what's up?
Well, I remember when the Orange Man Baby was in for his first time around and talked about how he was going to make taxes so easy you could do them on a postcard.
Sure.
Well, I'm trying to do my taxes, and they are the most complicated, ridiculously stupid things I've ever seen in my life. And there's no way I can do these things on my own. And I think that's something we're not talking about is all this taxes issue with, making them so much easier and they're so much more complicated, and why people should have to spend money on having taxes prepared. And I think I'm going to just get clobbered again this year. And I don't understand it. Why am I paying so much in taxes when the rich pay nothing?
You're preaching to the choir on that, Cindy, and I appreciate the call. And as much as Democrats tick me off, they did have a free filing program that the GOP decided, wouldn't it be better if we gave the money for the free filing program to Elon Musk? And unfortunately, a lot of the voters agreed. But yeah, you're talking to a guy that basically waits until April 13th every year to file his taxes. So you're preaching to the choir on that one there. But nevertheless, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. Let's switch gears here to what I was prepared to talk about, though, given the fact that I think we've said all we can say about this, and I will keep you guys posted, as I said, as things develop here. In the world of cost of medicine, and I'm not saying this is going to be a uniquely bad idea. I'm not saying that this is necessarily going to be bad. I'm just telling you what it is. The tariffs thus far have not worked. I think we can all agree on that. The tariffs right now are not providing the kind of boon that we were told that they would provide. But We're trying them again, and we're going to try them this time in the world of brand name drugs that come from other nations. Now, if you're a longtime listener to this show, we would talk about protests for the price of drugs. Bernie Sanders did it with a lot of his constituents. There was a march from Vermont to Canada in the name of finding cheaper drugs. And then to show you the bipartisan nature of that, we also talked about Ron DeSantis in Florida engaging in trying to work out deals with buying generic drugs from Canada, because it would be cheaper to do that than buy your drugs in America, because we have a uniquely bad healthcare system here in terms of the cost of it, whether it be from actually administering healthcare to the cost of pharmaceuticals to whatever the situation may be. Both Bernie Sanders and Ron DeSantis engaging in the same actions over the course of the last 10 years probably highlights that it's a bipartisan issue that should get more attention. We'll see if that ends up happening. What Donald Trump is proposing is a 100% tariff on brand name drugs coming from overseas. He did this citing the import reliance as the main reason of the decision. I have a quote right here. I have determined that it is necessary and appropriate to impose a 100% ad valorem duty rate to the import of patented pharmaceuticals and associated pharmaceutical ingredients. Now, I think it is important to highlight that this is for brand name drugs. The example that I gave you with Sanders and DeSantis is for generic drugs. So this is not an apples to apples comparison. Donald Trump's attitude when engaging in something like this is that the plants that manufacture these drugs will have to be built in America. And he went as far as saying so, where is it here? The most favored nation agreements are going to receive lower tariffs than the other ones compared to the 100% tariff going to the not most favored nations. But then also any companies that decide that are headquartered in a foreign nation that decide to build some manufacturing plants here in America will ultimately see that reduction in tariffs as well. Here's the problem with that, though. You're not going to convince me that it is the shipping fees that are causing the drugs to be as high as they are. We've highlighted, I was at the forefront of the conversation about Xtandi. I am now seeing commercials for Xtandi on national news networks. If you don't know what Xtandi is, it is a prostate cancer drug. Anybody who has prostate cancer drugs that uses Xtandi, according to testimony from people that have used it, find that they are able to live more traditional lives despite having been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And for the simple cost of about $190,000 a year, you too can have Xtandi. And I just find it hard to believe that the act of moving it from where it is produced into America is going to be able to knock a sizable amount of that price off. Now, to be fair, even in all the countries that do healthcare right, your Japans, your Germanys, your basically any industrialized nation that isn't America, even there, this drug costs $40-something thousand a year. It is not cheap right now. The materials that go into it and our capacity to make it requires the cost to be high. We are paying 4 times plus what other nations are paying still, but it wouldn't be cheap no matter what. And I recognize that a lot of people listening would struggle with that price tag even reduced. But if you're telling me that the reason that every other nation is getting these drugs at a reduced price is because it's made in Europe or it's made in Japan or whatever the situation may be, I got a bridge to sell you, and not one of the bridges that the DEI defense secretary is intending to blow up while claiming it's in the name of self-defense. I don't understand, or I should say I do understand, but in the interim, so for right now, until those plants, until the manufacturing companies come to America, until we get them in America, we now have 100% tariff on a cost of drugs crisis that is already far too high as we are watching people's premiums get ready to increase. I'm not saying that this won't bring the price of drugs down. I have no evidence one way or the other than the fact that the tariffs thus far have not brought the price of anything down. But what I am saying is that the price is definitely going to go up in the interim while we work through this. And this was passed via executive order, so it's not even realistically like you can really hold anybody to account. This is just going across the finish line as we speak here. This is one of those stories that gets swept under the radar given the chaos that we deal with every single day, that I think is worth highlighting moments before we have to call it a show on a Friday. I do have to squeeze one more commercial break in here before we call it a week. Old Lib on the YouTube line says, NBC News, fighter jet down over Iran, search and rescue mission underway. So we are in the middle of that right now. We'll see what that escalates towards. I doubt anything's going to transpire over the course of the next 11 minutes, but we'll be keeping an eye on it. And you can bet your butts I'll be talking about it on Monday when we get in here. We do have to squeeze that break in here, though. We'll have one more segment. Any more thoughts? Get them in now before we go away for a while here. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY.
For a free estate planning seminar. They're held monthly and designed to give you clarity, not pressure. Sign up at hooperlawoffice.com. Hooper Law Office. Locations in Appleton, Oshkosh, and Green Bay, or virtually. Everyone has a legacy. Let's protect it together.
WHBY and Care Patrol present Women Who Wow Us all this year, throughout this year, on Focus Fox Valley with Haley Tenpass. We're looking for the women in the Fox Valley that are doing just some tremendous things that are worth highlighting, all leading up to August 26th, where we find some of our finalists for some of the most impressive women. If you have a woman who wows you, head to WHBY.com and nominate them today. That's Women Who Wow Us here on WHBY with Care Patrol. Check out the daily tax tips, 6:20 a.m. as well as 12:20 and 4:20 p.m. here on WHBY, brought to you by Hailing and Associates. That's hailingandassociates.com. Feel like this is like a every Friday kind of way to end a show here, but it's the unfortunate reality that we find ourselves faced with. Cynthia out in Florida was texting me during the break. It provided me a couple of different sources here. Channel 12 out of Israel, which is citing United States sources. Also available on Ynet, which is also Israeli news. U.S. fighter jet downed in Iran. Pilot rescued in fair condition. Navigator's fate unknown. So that's where we stand as of right now. Obviously, double, triple check these sources, but I appreciate the information nevertheless. And Cynthia ends with, "It's not a Good Friday, and I'm going to be praying all day and all weekend." And I understand that. I understand there's a lot of people scared, and I really do feel like I need to stress, because we dive into it here every single day, and I realize sometimes the events of the world can be a bit harrowing at times. And I'm not saying to disconnect or not care or lose interest, but I am saying that there's only so much that we can do as lone individuals. We're not going to be able to stop this today. I don't want to sound defeatist, but the fact is these guys are going to roll along. If you guys heard, they're looking for another $500 billion added to the defense budget while talking about reducing other programs. What's funny is in a world where news hadn't broken during this show, Donald Trump has actually attached his 2020 6 midterms here to the idea of ginning up support by talking about the need to really double down on defense spending at a time when a cost of living and affordability crisis is absolutely strangling us. It's going to be a failed strategy. It's going to fail miserably. I'll tell you that right now. It doesn't matter what happens in Iran between now and then. It's going to be a failed strategy. But it's a cause for concern for sure. And I understand Cynthia's absolutely feeling the impacts of this. Cindy obviously called with a similar attitude as well. Be with family this weekend. And it's going to sound insensitive. Try and focus on blocking this stuff out a little bit. Do not engage in talking politics at the dinner table. And when we come back on Monday, we're going to have plenty more to dive into. You stay informed, you organize, you stay within your community, and you push back against this kind of stuff. It's not rocket science, and it's also incredibly scary and overwhelming, and I totally get that. Just try and find your peace and your ability to separate yourself from the news cycle that seems to be just overwhelming each and every day. That's just me, of course, to provide a little bit of insight here. Well, forget about it. Never mind. In any event, we're going to have to put an end to the show there. Thank you so much to everybody who's been embracing these new ways to watch the show. I've got a YouTube channel at Ben Cominos. We also post live on Facebook. Probably going to start posting it live on the WHBY pages as well, which I'm looking forward to. And of course, the show rebroadcasts on the Political Voices Network at 1 p.m. with some extra bells and whistles there, which I definitely appreciate their interest in the program too. And of course, download that WHBY app. Just search WHBY in Google Play or in the App Store. It is free and easy to use and is fantastic time. And as Jeremani says, she's going to take Easter weekend to go knock on some doors and get out to vote. We've got voting day on Tuesday, guys, and Haley's up next. Outside the box, have a great and safe Easter weekend.